joined by Victor Arias. Thanks for joining me. We are going to do another session of 5 or 10-minute RGM, where I'm going to be talking with Victor around the trends in the world of RGM and keen to get your thoughts and experiences on working in this space. Victor, would you like to do a brief introduction of yourself?
Quickly about myself, I'm originally from Colombia. I had the pleasure of working for large multinational companies, and I've also had the privilege of being in several markets, like mostly Latam, Colombia, Chile, Mexico. But I've also had regional roles in Europe and Latin America, and I've also been able to have global roles based in Switzerland with Nestle.
Well, what would you say is one of the biggest difference between, let's say, a global RGM function versus a in-market RGM function?
I think there are similar things, and I think it depends on the stage of where RGM is on. RGM has cycles, and companies, they're very eager at the beginning where they're really launching it and rolling it out, and that's where you get the most benefits. And then you go into a cycle where it's not something new anymore, and you try to do the embedding in the markets. And when this goes on successfully, global and regional teams tend to change, tend to get smaller, more leaner, and even the tools that sometimes you recommended or the processes are not necessarily working flawlessly. So those different cycles really determine the role that you need to have. What's certain and the same for all of them, it's your key stakeholder management. When you're in a global role and you're maybe launching the RGM initiative for the first time, you need to be able to, bring confidence to the senior leadership team that this will actually deliver behind the investment in building the capabilities, investing behind the tools, paying the consultants. When you're in the region, you're more of an enabler. You got to make sure you talk to the market head of the country and align his priorities for the categories that he really wants to address for a proper RGM rollout, expansion, or solutions. And then also talk to the business manager that's handling that specific category or brand and making sure that they're aligned. So in the end, you're doing stakeholder management, objectives and KPIs alignment across. And then when you're in a local role, it's also key stakeholder management, but then you're going with sales. Anything that you do on strategy, on a PowerPoint, on an Excel that cannot be executed or roll out with sales and that the actual customer will buy on, it's a waste of time. You get to more senior positions in RGM, you really need to ensure that you're managing key stakeholders well and that you identify what are those KPIs and different levels and roles that you need to make sure that come to life while you do the different roles.
Yeah, no, I fully echo that, and it's quite recognizable. When I was doing global RGM, often we needed to have a lot of political conversations because also RGM can be quite sensitive, right? When you're telling people to change their operating model or to follow the guidelines that you set out from global, but you need to make sure you understand the market dynamics.
Yeah.
And in contrast to that, yeah, you can have the best plan in PowerPoint, but when you go with sales and visit the buyer, all of that goes out the window,
Oh yeah.
All comes down to execution. Yeah.
And I think it brings to life and to light, some systemic flaws that strategy may have in terms of category. How strong is your category strategy? How valuable are your brands? Are you overspending on just pricing versus value creation, and better positioning for the brand? And when you realize that the volume is not coming in after some price increases, and usually they're going to do some finger pointing towards sometimes the RGM team. And what we need to be very savvy in conveying to the leadership team, we understand that these were the assumptions, and maybe the scenario didn't play out as we were, but what we need to now understand it's what are the underlying factors that this brand is not being able to price the market pricing. And then you have more interesting and meaningful discussions about how to move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Over the next 12 months, which RGM trends will matter the most for your business And where will you focus your team efforts?
We came out of the pandemic and the hyperinflation that we were seeing in so many markets. And I think when you look in the rearview mirror, it's very clear that most of the FMCG companies overpriced. There were some years, especially 22, 23, where there was a lot of inelasticity in the market. And then everything got expensive. Sensibility to pricing just skyrocketed. The big players pay the price in eroding margins, profits, and in just in loss of market share. Now, I think we're a little bit over that, but you have new factors coming in. The pressure from AI and shareholders making sure that you have a specific plan. Leaders in these companies that are not able to convey the journey of how long that will take and invest excessively, they're going to erode profits faster than they should. As we coming to a time where we have learned from our mistakes, it's crucial that we really go behind very specific discipline in pricing, because I think the biggest learning is it's better to ensure that we price consistently and effectively, and not then having to react to market changing condition in COGS that make us make really bad decisions. And this brings in enablers like mix management, like price pack architecture, that are going to be crucial from now on to ensure that your strategy for the value of your brand remains consistent, and that consumers will not, isolate you because you messed up in the pricing. And then you have to do very expensive promotions that really erode your credibility with consumers, with customers, and that set precedents that you then cannot take back.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So especially this shift in massive prices being accepted during COVID, and then towards the tail end of it, people start to wake up, shrinkflation, the supply chain, massive increase in costs, which was then reduced again with the retailers asking the suppliers, okay, are you going to compensate us back and lower the prices? So
Exactly. And then now, so you have to do a lot of promotion. You have to give back. A lot of companies are giving back to the consumer nowadays. And you're having two factors. Either you did it well and you're allowed to now price correctly, or you're actually doing it quite lower. The problem is you're still having some increased costs in your P&L. And now that we're seeing that AI is going to be quite expensive to actually roll out, then you have the pressure of what other lines of the P&L do you find efficiencies? And this is where you're seeing a lot of the layoffs of the big companies that clearly, profit needs to be there for shareholders. So I think the faster you're able to align your digitalization internally to make sure that you're training AI models correctly, and that you're able, with a linear structure, to actually deliver the same value, those guys are going to be coming out on top in the future.
to what extent do you see the responsibility RGM has as a function within organizations to drive that?
I think the issues we're seeing today is that, fortunately, RGM careers are not necessarily built to do sometimes this cross-functional back and forth that really enable the leaders of RGM to have this really strong background, this really critical thinking that allows you to be able to go and do the right recommendations, because you do have a bigger picture than a lot of areas in the companies. But unless you're able to do two things: one, understand it, and two, convey the message clearly, you're not going to be successful at it.
What role do you think RGM plays in, avoiding misalignment between sales, finance, trade marketing, and so on?
RGM needs to be crystal clear of what the company is trying to do. Company strategy, category strategy, channel strategy, and then what are the KPIs that each of the areas you have in finance, in marketing, and in supply chain. Once you kind of understand that, everything that you're bringing to the table clearly connects to one of the KPIs, to one of the strategies, I think your job is easier. And then inevitably, you do have to get some alliances, because it's very difficult that everybody's going to be in the same page with you. Finance tends to be a good ally with RGM. But
Yeah.
if you manage to get very close to the marketing side, to the category side, that's a big enabler to ensure that manufacturing and supply chain understands the reason why you need, instead of 1 pack, 3 packs, because that's really going to enable distribution and growth. Click those together, you get a good business case for everybody to be quite supportive.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you call out distribution, because personally, we were always really focusing on distribution. This is your zero multiplier, right? If you
Yeah.
are not in any store, not in any shelf, you can have the best pack, you can have the best marketing plan, but you're not distributed, you will not sell anything. You've worked across a number of companies. Would you say also their distribution is a lever that's part of the RGM levers, or where does that responsibility typically sit?
So distribution usually tends to fall behind sales. Yet, I think that's where RGM is a big enabler on understanding two things: consumption occasions and demand moments. The moment you're creating a product, a pack, a price point that enables you to really address that consumption occasion and that other demand moment, link very closely to consumers, you get that trifecta that enables you to have that stacking effect of being able to go to a customer and get it listed, to then expand the product to more channels, and then to actually generate the repurchase. So if you really are able to nail that part of delivering products at the right price point, you have a big role in making sure that sales can do its job of then really, pulling up your sleeves and getting that sales and that distribution through any means or road to market that you may have.
Yeah, yeah. I have one final question for you.
Sure.
What is one lesson that you have learned early on in your career that still shapes your RGM approach today?
RGM, it's really about communicating clearly strategies, because everybody will have one opinion. From an RGM point of view, you connect all of those things and you become trusted as an objective area that can really communicate and bring together all the interests that different areas have. This is when you're really successful. You're understood, and then you create the embedding, right? You're able to be closer to the teams, building the strategy, taking your input, and you're able to launch products that from day one are successful.
Super valuable input, Victor. Thank you. Final question. Is there somebody from your network that you would like us to interview next?
Ivan Isaacs from Mars. He was in Mars. They're now integrating to Calanova. He's a great guy. Hook up with him. You'll get a lot of really fun insights.
Okay, I'll definitely reach out. Thanks for your time, Victor.
Thanks for your time, Alco, and lovely to chat with you.